Hello and welcome to the Cinema Savvy Movie Podcast. My name is Tayte Nyawa. I'm joined with George Aldridge. We have been requested for the final day of recap, so we are back again. I spent part of my Easter Sunday, instead of sitting with your family doing normal stuff, I watched some really boring Star Wars panels, and I am joined today with George, who did exactly the same. So, thoughts on today?
Thoughts on today. I missed the one panel that sounded interesting and the one panel that I really wanted to see, but I couldn't get round to because I had other commitments because it's Easter Sunday. And
Correct. I also missed that panel.
Formula One was on. I had friends over. I couldn't watch it. And then the Mark Hamill. We'll go into very vague thoughts on the others before we go into properly, but
Yeah, sure.
the Mark Hamill panel again, his fourth of the weekend, or the 4 days. And then we had the closing ceremony, which we will get onto. Don't you worry about that. But yeah, just as an overview, this was definitely the worst day of Celebration 2017, without a question of the doubt. It kind of felt like, okay, we're tired. Did this need to be 4 days long? That's the real question now.
I'm going to say no. Definitely no. Especially seeing as it's Easter Sunday, man. Come on. It's a day for kind of like chilling out and doing nothing. And I feel like they kind of took that approach to a whole new level with the celebration.
It's a shame because it was the first 3 days were great, and we all thought there'd be something massive at the end of day 4, and there wasn't. Last year there was only 3 days of celebration, but it was very much. We had Rogue One panel on day 1, we had EA and Rebels on day 2. Day 3 was future filmmakers / closing ceremony, which was a great closing ceremony, which we'll talk of later. But yeah, like not even. Exclusively wise, there were no announcements today. That was the Hasbro panel was last night. The merchandise stuff was last night, and today was really the kind of let's pack up. Let's see what leftover merchandise we can buy from Celebration Store. Let's see if we can get any signatures we couldn't get the other day. It was very much the end of the weekend fatigue. Mark Hamill, we'll go into later, but he's losing his voice. Andy Gutierrez, who hosted the Star Wars show for the 4 days, she was losing her voice across the last day. And when she was saying goodbye earlier, it just sounded like she wanted to cry because, again, they've been talking nonstop for 4 days. Everyone's signing autographs with me as well. It's a long time. I think most celebrations are 3 days, so the fourth day.
Stressing on them. It really is, and like you can see that. I mean, I saw it with everyone. I mean, even Warwick Davis at the end looked just dejected. See that from like a massive like Comic-Con styled celebration, especially about Star Wars, something where everyone can get behind. You just don't want to see people looking bored and people looking kind of. Yeah. And the only person who I actually saw who looked happy was the guy who they had as the hype guy on the StarWars.com stage for the entire week, and he was still like, "Who wants to go see BB-8? You want to go see BB-8?" He was the only guy who actually had a smile throughout the entire day.
He's always hyper on the Star Wars show and stuff, and as someone that's watched it called Andy Gutierrez, she is without a doubt like one of the best hosts. She gets on well with the higher ups. She's in the no one stuff. She's really big with the fans. She's getting loads of Starfields across the weekend, getting people. Someone dressed up as a lightsaber, and she demanded to get a picture with them, stuff like that. And to see her, kind of, she was still happy, but you could feel the pain in her voice, and I felt so bad for her. But literally, the downside is we both missed the one good panel, and I've been told a lot of details about it, so I can vaguely talk about it.
So let's talk about the what was it called? Droid. It was the one about the droids, right?
Yeah. So it was a panel hosted by Adam Tudyk and Anthony Daniels, so K2SO and C3PO.
Yeah. And
the description I've got was those two guys. It was like a buddy cop movie. They were bouncing off each other. They were having a really good time. They were really funny. It was apparently one of the best panels of the weekend. A pleasant surprise. They brought a BB-8 out later on. They brought Chopper out later on. So you kind of had 4 and R2. So you had the 5 main droids of Star Wars together. Obviously, 2 of them weren't in their suits, but it was meant to be phenomenal. And they had behind-the-scenes footage, a lot of behind-the-scenes footage from Rogue One on Alan Tudyk, which they were talking about. He spoke about some of his other roles and sort of Moana, his Disney work. But
we don't want to hear about that. We want to hear about him in Dodgeball, and we want to hear about him...
Knight's Tale as well.
Bunny from Robot and stuff like that.
But
because I watched iRobot whilst I was back in Austria, and like I think the film that I watched immediately after iRobot was my first time watching Rogue One, and I just could not get it out of my head that it was exactly the same voice. And you can go back and watch iRobot now, and you can just go, Jesus, he really hasn't changed the voice even slightly between the two characters.
it's great though. I love iRobot.
It's brilliant.
It's a panel that I'm going to watch tomorrow morning on loop. Well, not loop, after I come back from work because I've got a long day tomorrow.
Yeah.
But yeah, unfortunately, we both missed the really fun one. So sorry, people, expecting anything. But again, there was, yeah.
It's Easter. Give us a break.
Yeah. I've watched a lot of these across 4 days. I've made a lot of YouTube videos across 4 days. And
across 2 channels. Quick shout out to Ones with the Force, a Star Wars podcast.
Thank you. We've just covered day 4, and it was very much obviously Dave and Phil had everything on this panel, which is I'm trying to talk about the highlights of this panel, but the atmosphere was the same as we get to the closing panel. Me and you will
very quickly go to what I'd say was the best panel that we both saw today, the Hamill Himself panel, and I've seen a bunch of Mark Hamill panels like that is just rolling off the tongue now. But this one, obviously he had his voice. What's he
I forgot the name, but he said he had not lungitis. That sounds worse than what it is. Essentially, he's got, obviously I'm guessing because he's done 4 panels, he's been signing loads, talking loads. He said yesterday he got ill with
laryngitis, is it?
It's nothing major, but it's for a few days, I think. I forgot the name of it. It ends in vitis. But yeah, he still came out and did his panel, and this is a guy who I'll talk about loads. Of all the Star Wars cast crew, anyone to have ever worked on it, he's Luke Skywalker, the protagonist of the Star Wars saga.
Yeah.
And the fact that coincidentally Mark Hamill is the Star Wars member that grew up a normal geek, that loves the work. He's always been to conventions, and he says this, and he's always connected best with the fans. And
yeah,
what I liked, he did a panel last year, but he doesn't ever repeat himself. He's got so many stories to tell. And the thing with Mark Hamill is he's telling us, the geeks, because he's one of us, the stories he knows we would like to hear and be interested in, rather than just a generic story about maybe how he spent a couple of grand on a night out that some people would do. But he will go for the sort of the geekier, funny things because he knows how to connect with people. And I wouldn't say it's a gift, but he's just because he understands the concept of the fan, and he's very appreciative of everything that's happened to him. The fact he was ill, he still came out. He didn't go early. He did his full hour. I've got all the time in the world for that guy.
Loads of respect for that dude. And we've actually got a commenter in the shape of our longtime commenter Auburn. I just got back this morning from Celebration. One reason I came back today was because nothing sounded interesting. My voice has gone myself. The special convention store was out of merchandise by the end of yesterday. I left last night about 10:30 and people looked exhausted. I got my autograph first thing yesterday. The signers were looking tired, especially Peter Mayhew. I don't feel bad for having left, except that it is the anniversary celebration. Yeah, that kind of sums up what we were trying to kind of put into words, even though we weren't there. Watching from home, everyone kind of looked a bit tired. But back to the Luke, sorry, keep on calling him Luke. Back to the Hamill Himself panel. He talked a lot about his other characters outside of Star Wars, which I quite liked. I know that he does that in other panels as well, sometimes. But the Joker, such an iconic kind of like voice that is brought through from Hamill, and as well as playing the Trickster in the Flash series, which I do need to get back to. I stopped watching it as soon as I went to Austria, but I always love to see his character kind of show up because he is kind of like one of those heroes from my childhood. Like, he will always be Luke.
Mark Hamill is one of the funnest guys, and even on stage, he's ill in his voice, and he goes for that Joker voice. He doesn't he won't ever, except last year because Killing Joke was coming out, but yeah, he will never sit there and just do a Joker voice to say you will want to hear it. Someone will say something and he'll kind of reply, and what he always does is he puts his head back like this, he moves his hands like and then he goes into the proper Joker mode, and you get these hints of it, and he's ill and he's still doing it. I love him. Flash is a series that I love, series 1 and 2, but I naturally have just grown older with the entirety of the DC TV series. Not that I love Flash. Enjoyed Legends of Tomorrow. Arrow went downhill, but keeping on track of 5 DC TV series, having to watch every single episode in the right order.
Wait, what 5?
It's Supergirl, Arrow, Flash, Legends of Tomorrow, and although it's cancelled, Constantine kind of counts because he ended up being in Arrow. Whether or not there's more coming, I don't know. And you know what? There's just too many. I loved Arrow. I love Flash is a series. When it finishes, I might end up just watching on itself. But Arrow was brilliant for 2 years and just completely went off the radar. But
collapsed so
bring
hard.
in Mark Hamill.
I just want to go back to the Hamill talk. My actual favorite part of the panel itself, answer natural questions off the cuff. Like he'd go and ask the audience members, and he wouldn't actually just say, "Oh yes, I want to ask a question." He would basically torture the person to get a question out of them. They would shove the microphone in the person's face, and they'd go, "Okay," and he said, "Okay, go on, tell me the question," and they just kind of sat there going, "Shit, this is a hard enough experience trying to talk to like someone as big as you." Like they're trying to control their emotions and stuff like that, but it was just kind of great to see that kind of interaction that he has with people. Even like once you said, like even if he's ill, he still has a brilliant sense of humor.
Yeah, and one thing I loved, going back to the sort of fan stuff with him, every time they got someone, they would say this person there right at the back on the balcony. And Mark Hamill kind of jumped up and was like, "I don't care where they're sat," and he kind of said, every single person that has a question, well, that he can answer, I'm going to answer the question. I will talk to you. Don't think because you sat somewhere I'm not going to do it. I'm here with you. And what an absolute awesome dude.
It's student involvement. Like you talk to the audience and stuff like that, and the audience will talk back. It's beautiful. It's brilliant. Wait a sec, another comment. Once again from Auburn. Peter and Anthony Daniels yesterday. These are autographs. So just saying who the autographs were and stuff like that. It's really cool to actually have people commenting who actually went to the celebration, stuff like that, because obviously the rest of the Cinema Savvy lot, except for me, went last year. And I've been kind of sat at home wanting to go this year, but it's all the way over on the other side of the world, basically. And shall we just drop the announcement that they dropped at the end very quickly, because I do want to touch on that before we get to the actual final closing ceremony of the Mark Hamill. No, I want to go with all the way to the end.
Go for it.
So we don't actually have an area for the next celebration.
Yeah, I'm very, very pissed off. I think it's the right word for this.
That troubles me.
They said in March they announced there's going to be no celebration in 2018. It's going to be in 2019, reverting back to it used to be biannual, the celebration, and which was fine. And they said originally the statement said it will be announced at Star Wars Celebration. I went online earlier. I refound the statement. It's been edited, and it now says that it will be. They cut off half of it and said it's going to be coming to celebration.com very, very soon. And the issue I have with this is that we know that Star Wars Land is opening in 2019. We know that there's a Star Wars Celebration in 2019. We know they're going to coincide. Anaheim is where they've done Celebration twice before. There's a Disneyland at Anaheim, which is where Star Wars Land is being built. So just stop teasing it. And the issue is that I've worked out D23 is back this year, the Disney corporate event, which is every 2 years. They're obviously going to announce it there and then. Jumping ahead right at the end, when we get to it, I'll go through, but the celebration panel was abysmal is the correct word for me, especially after being there last year. But if we want to talk about Hamill, I'll get into my complete thoughts on the closing ceremony.
Yeah, definitely.
Is there anything left to say on the Mark Hamill? Yeah, you go first. You go first.
Okay, I'm done with Mark Hamill. He had a brilliant celebration. Now let's talk about. I had the choice. I could watch Line of Duty tonight, or I could go and sit down and watch the end of Celebration. And for you guys, I watched the end of Celebration. I regretted it all the way through. What a boring disappointment that was. I was expecting some grand spectacle. I was expecting the Han Solo spin-off, getting more information. I was maybe expecting a tiny bit more, just a tiny bit more in The Last Jedi. Maybe I don't know them dropping another thing for any of the other things they mentioned throughout the entirety of the weekend, anything at all. Like even just going forward and completely just saying, "Oh yeah, we're doing the Obi-Wan Kenobi spin-off, and here is the cast," or something like that, and we're gonna get it filming soon, or something like that. Anything at all. Nothing. It was boring. They just said goodbye to people on stages and looked at their favorite moments. That's even the audience were disappointed. If you got the audience there disappointed, how are you meant to react at home when you've got booing there? Like, I don't want to seem like a real downer, but I did go and watch Line of Duty afterwards, and it made me feel so much better to know that there is actual good things to watch out there on a Sunday Easter night.
Yeah, it's right. If I give a bit of background to my thoughts on the closing ceremony, obviously I attended Star Wars Celebration last year, easily one of the best weekends of my life. I met many of my heroes. I had an amazing time for 3 days. On day one, I queued overnight to get into the Rogue One panel, which was outstanding. We got to see a trailer that they never released online in the end. We got to see Krennic come out in full costume with Death Troopers. It was a brilliant weekend, and they teased the closing ceremony. And
screw it. I wanted to see Hux this weekend. But where was Hux? Where was Donald Gleason?
He's a busy guy though. Last year, the closing ceremony was a double feature called the Future Filmmakers Panel / Closing Ceremony. It was always advertised as both of those. And so they had queuing overnight for it. I queued with my sister, Emily. I met Phil and Dave there. Chris joined us halfway through the night. I remember waking up and he was sat there, which was really bizarre, but quite cool. And yeah, so we had our wristbands. Everyone was excited. And the way that panel worked, you had the entire of the Lucasfilm story group came out, and it was moderated by Pablo Hidalgo. And this is kind of cool. Ryan Johnson was there. They just wrapped on episode 8. He released 1 or 2 behind-the-scenes pictures. Then Phil Lord and Chris Miller came out, who were doing the Han Solo film. They spoke about, we're in pre-production. We're going to be shooting sometime early next year, blah, blah, blah. Then they spoke about that. They did some jokey Lego things. And then Mark Hamill, Alden, they confirmed the Han Solo casting, which we knew about, but the official confirmation came and he walked out on stage. Had him there. He had a Q&A, chatted with them. Then Mark Hamill came out. Then Carrie Fisher came out. The atmosphere for a closing ceremony, the atmosphere was crazy. And then John Boyega turned up, who wasn't at Celebration previously that weekend. And they kind of wrapped it with a big celebration. The key words there. They had a chat together. They were hugging the music. It was honestly one of the coolest couple of minutes of my life. And I wasn't expecting that this year, but I messaged you on Facebook before and I said, yeah, I'm expecting either, because Kathleen Kennedy was there last year, as well. I forgot to say that. Kathleen Kennedy that was there. I did not think, they didn't advertise the panel, which I just thought naturally a closing ceremony would be the same as last year. There'd be something. The fact that Ewan McGregor was neither there, nor Skyping in, nor mentioned at all on Thursday at the anniversary panel, thought for me, that kind of thought, okay, maybe the Kenobi announcement could come on Sunday. We know that he's basically going to do it. We know he wants to do it. And he didn't seem the sort of person that would have turned down coming to Celebration. So I thought, okay, we're going to get that. Or we're going to get some official stuff for Han Solo, maybe a picture or two of the cast and costume together, seeing as it's a year away now. It's due in May next year still. Maybe even a name for the Han Solo film. I thought,
especially now that we're not going to have another celebration before then. We're not going to have any information before then.
Exactly. We're just getting D23 in August and whatever they would feel like doing, which is very, very risky. I think they should move it to December. I think they will do, but time is coming. And then there wasn't, I thought they might announce the next celebration. This was expected. I thought they were going to give a release date for the Star Wars theme park, and we got neither. The problem with the panel is that, yes, it was advertised as a closing ceremony, and yes, it's Star Wars Celebration, but all they did was thanking fans for turning up. You meant to do that? To hype up a panel for that entire convention was really frustrating to listen to, because you had people who were there, they'd waited a long time. There was no overnight queuing last night. They wouldn't allow it. However, there would have been people queuing early in the morning to get into this panel for today. People would have been excited for this, given how incredible last year's panel was. And the fact we've now covered the 4 days, and the only real surprise announcement as such was that Star Wars Rebels is finishing. I mean, I'm not going to harp on about what I wanted, what I want doesn't get. I'm not going to sit there and moan, but you know, a lot of people were saying, "Are we going to get maybe some announcements for the anniversary? Could we get something coming into cinemas? Could we get a Blu-ray release? Could they announce something?
Yeah.
Could someone turn up? You know, there's so many things that could have happened."
Can I just quickly, from a casual Star Wars fan perspective, because I know that you're more hardcore than I am, like definitely, and there are a lot of people who will be watching this who will also agree that I'm not the biggest Star Wars fan. Like, I love Star Wars, but like I'm not huge. From my perspective, you have the 40th anniversary celebration panel, brilliant. You have the Last Jedi panel, probably the highlight of the weekend. Then you've got Rebels finishing. That's a down note. And then you've got there being no celebration next year. Another downer note. And then you've got no announcement for where it's going to be next. Another downer note. And then you've got a downgrade on the actual finale from what was experienced last year in London. Seems like it started off really well at a high level, and this celebration has just kind of dipped down towards the end across the last 2 days. Like, as far as a planning perspective, I mean, even Warwick Davis at the end was, like I've already said before, he looked fatigued, he looked a bit tired, and there was booing.
Yeah,
actual booing.
It's everyone expected the next celebration announcement, and for him to say, "We will see you next time." Long pause. He's expected to say the location, and what did he say? When we know where, was it something like
wherever it is?
And
I think he said wherever.
And then you just heard a whole load of boos. There's people, the one fan base you don't want to piss off. That's not football, because unfortunately I'm a part of the other joke fan base. Is Star Wars.
What, Arsenal?
There's probably a Wenger outside at celebration somewhere. Before he even said it, he knew what was going to happen.
You could see it on his face, like everyone in the crowd probably thought, "Oh yeah, he's going to announce it," and you could see he was already going, "Sorry, guys."
It was. I guess the point of a closing ceremony is to close it off, but really,
okay, I'm going to put this into perspective. That's something that I can kind of imagine. When we had the Paralympics closing ceremony for the London 2012 Games, they had Coldplay, one of the biggest bands on the planet, do an hour-and-a-half concert where they had special guests come on. They had Cirque du Soleil perform, and they had all this amazing shit going on. And then you compare it to them talking to various different people, saying goodbye to them, and a small recap video.
It's just, to me, the obvious comparison is just because the celebration was a year ago. That ended like the last year.
There's fatigue from last year, maybe.
Well, the problem with not problem as such. With celebration, it was always every 2 years, and 2015 was Anaheim. So what they did 2016. That was the first ever one in successive years, and before 2016, had a lot of complaints, especially from not just Americans but people that traveled to America for the previous year, saying two celebrations in a row. This is really expensive. Flying over, getting flights, hotels. Yeah. Having a year to save up for this. But then what was even worse is that Celebration 2017 was announced before 2016 Celebration took place. So for the first time, they've had 3 celebrations in a row, which, you know, okay, if I had money of the sheikhs, then I would be at these having the time of my life. However, for a lot of people, this is a family event. It's very hard to be able to afford to go to 3 celebrations, especially if you're doing the whole getting signatures, stuff like that. And I don't think it's fatigue from celebration. I just feel that for the way this week started, with it being the 40th anniversary, The Last Jedi,
and then it just drops.
Rebels and Battlefront, but the Battlefront panel was definitely the best of yesterday. That could have easily been today, and that would have warranted the extra day. But today there was
Rebels on one day, and maybe like, I mean, we obviously didn't see the droid one today, so that could have been the best panel of the entire weekend, and we completely missed out on it. But sadly, working with what we've got right now, which realistically people don't get into every single panel. They're only able to get into 1 or 2 panels when they're attending the event. Like you guys said, you had to queue overnight for like a couple of the panels. So it's you've put that into perspective for the people who are actually going there, thinking, oh yeah, I'm going to wait and queue up for the closing ceremony, and to be disappointed like that, I would be severely pissed off. I really would, because if I knew that it was going to be as boring as that, I would spend my final day looking up cool merchandise, just going to places where I hadn't been before in the event, instead of queuing up for what essentially turned out to be Warwick Davis saying, let's go over to this stage, and then not actually have anything presented on the stage where the people queued up for.
Yeah, it's such a down way to end celebration. I mean, I don't think down is the right word. It couldn't compare to the first 3 days as such. And
can we just straight up say, could we have squeezed everything into 3 days?
Exactly. And I think they probably could have. Yeah, it should have been 3 days. They're always 3 days, but maybe because it was Easter weekend, they wanted to do something
extended. But today may have felt more like a family day.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, the thing is, we weren't there today, so we can't comment. We can't comment on the shop floor. We can't comment on how the builders were. We can't comment on the shop. It's something that was very, very different. But Auburn said, between Last Jedi and Carrie Fisher panel, I was in line for 12 hours straight.
It's
what we do, though.
Everyone. And if you really do love the fandom that much, then you're willing to queue for that. And they need to understand that. It's less about putting on the event for the people, but also taking into account the strenuous circumstances that can be brought forward to anyone involved. Like, we're obviously talking earlier about Mark Hamill losing his voice towards the end. More than one person presenting losing their voice because the amount that they've had to kind of convey across to crowds of people who want to come and see them. And 4 days allows you to be able to maybe queue up for one panel to go see Mark Hamill, but what about queuing up to see all the rest of them? And like, obviously I haven't been to either of these events. If you really want to know my kind of Comic-Con background, the only major event I've ever been to is MCM in London, which I've been to twice now. And both times it involved a reasonable amount of queuing, but not that much queuing. There isn't any main stages to go and see. Therefore, it's more of kind of like a walking around the shop floor, which a lot of people would have just been able to do. But for the people who are dedicated enough to queue up, I can't even fathom how disappointing it would have been to go into that final area, into the final closing ceremony celebration, and just to be kind of disappointed with that. And that's not how we want to remember Star Wars Celebration 2017. We want to remember it for the good things. We want to remember it for the Battlefront. We want to remember it for the 40th anniversary celebration panel. We want to remember it for the Carrie Fisher panel. We want to remember it for The Last Jedi and The Last Jedi trailer. So just before we kind of go into our final thoughts, what was your favorite thing from this year's celebration, or your favorite panels?
The best panel was the 40th anniversary. However, the moment is, there's so many brilliant moments across the weekend. You've got George Lucas coming out, one of my idols, the guy that without him, I'm not talking on this podcast. I wouldn't be into films as much. Gets way too much abuse with the same boring comments made to him. Seeing him moderate a panel for an hour, seeing the fans' feedback with him was a quite a touching moment. And then obviously Harrison coming out was great, kind of expected, but to me, of that panel, it was the whole 30-minute, the George Lucas tribute to Carrie Fisher, followed by Billy Lord, followed by that video, followed by John Williams. That without I was an absolute wreck watching that. I couldn't imagine there being a dry eye in that room at all. And that was easily the moment. It was.
I think on the final montage they did actually show, like when they showed that panel again, they showed a shot of the audience and half of it was just tearing up.
It was,
and I was just kind of, God, like, that was one of my favorite moments of the weekend.
What I forgot to say, the Droid panel this morning, they began it with a big tribute to Kenny Baker, which was probably quite cool. I think Warwick Davis led it, talked about him being an idol.
Warwick Davis in the end said, this year we remembered Carrie, we've also remembered, like, it's just like, yeah, it's sad for the Star Wars universe to let go of two of its finest, but they did do a very good job of remembering both of them.
Yeah.
So yeah, my personal favorite moment. I'm torn. I really am. I really did like the Last Jedi trailer and the Last Jedi panel. I thought that was amazing. And I'm excited for Battlefront. The gamer in me is just kind of, yeah, I want to get on that. Especially because I had a limited play with the first Battlefront. So I'm really excited to actually get in and play the second one. As soon as it gets released in November, is it?
November the 17th. Yeah,
Beautiful.
there's been some truly
So
brilliant.
1 month before the date that I would say The Last Jedi would be coming out.
About 4 weeks before. I think it's the 15th.
Last year it was the
16th. Worldwide was the 16th. Worldwide was the 16th. We got the 15th.
Technically, it was 16th into 17th, wasn't it?
Yes, UK get it a day early, which is great. Yeah. Love it. Absolutely love it.
So it got released 16th UK, 17th worldwide.
So it'll be the 15th UK, 16th America this year.
Okay, cool.
But
well, you guys have learned what days I'm going back to Austria already. Any day after that. But yeah, any closing thoughts, George, on this year's celebration?
As much as we've kind of been on a downer today, it was honestly it's been a very fun weekend. I've watched a lot of YouTube videos. I've done a lot of sort of catch-ups, a lot of talks, a lot of listening. It's been a whole wealth of news to me. A lot of people on my Facebook that have been there. I'm envious of some of the things I've seen from them, especially the backstage stuff, which I can't go into. But yeah, it has honestly... I still wish I was there. As much as I've harped on today, missing celebration for personal reasons in the sense of money and being in my final 4 weeks to university, I will be there 2019. Even if it was on the moon, I'd still find a way to get there. I won't be missing it again anytime soon. I will be there.
So you heard that here first, folks. George is paying for the entirety of the Cinema Savvy Movie Podcast to get over and record over at the new Star Wars celebration.
Not at the price of an autograph from Felicity Jones, $200, who did not want to be there at all. Ooh. But that is a talk for another time.
Ooh, painful. But anyway, thank you ever so much for listening, everyone. First of all, shout out to the Ones with the Force podcast. They are the more Star Warsy side of our podcast. Like, comment, and subscribe, because we do stuff, or try to do stuff as much as possible to do with films. We've got actually a surprise possibly coming up this week to do with a film that is not yet released. Ooh, interesting. Not only that, but I'm going to try and get on some stuff, like some film, what do I call it? Thoughts on films. That's the one. I've got some that is ready to record. I just need to find the time to do so. Other than that, make sure to watch out for Chris's reactions. Tom may upload a film reflection. We have no idea, or the best picture as well. He's got 2 shows on the run at the moment. But other than that, make sure to find us on Facebook. If you type in Cinema Savvy into Facebook, you will find us. If you type in Cinema Savvy into Twitter, you will find us. If you type in Cinema Savvy into YouTube, you come to this place. So thank you ever so much for watching, and thank you ever so much for kind of being a part of our own little discussion on the Star Wars Celebration Orlando 2017, and we will see you guys next time. Latest.